When the world feels heavy, whether it's what's happening around us or something deeply personal, it's not just our thoughts that are affected, it's our bodies. Our nervous systems are constantly taking in information about safety, threat, and uncertainty. And when stress is high for long periods of time, those systems don't just get tired, they get stuck. This episode is part 3 of a 5-part series called When the World Feels Like Too Much. This series isn't about pushing through or pretending things are fine. It's about how to care for yourself practically and compassionately when life feels overwhelming, unstable, or unsafe. In the first episode, we talked about sleep and why protecting rest matters so much during hard times. In the second episode, we talked about movement and why even gentle movement can help right now when it feels accessible. Today, we're going deeper because beneath sleep and movement is something even more foundational: your nervous system. In this episode, we're going to talk about what your nervous system actually needs right now. Not theory, not in a perfect world, but in the real conditions you're living in. We'll look at why calming down often doesn't work, why your reactions make sense given what you've been going through, and how to create small moments of safety and regulation without forcing yourself into stillness or positivity. This isn't about controlling your nervous system. It's about understanding it so you can work with it instead of fighting it. Let's start there. Be sure to listen. Welcome to the Self-Loved ADHD Woman's Way podcast. I'm your host, Jen Barnes. If you're an ADHD woman entrepreneur, ADHD adjacent, or ADHD-ish, you've come to the right place. We'll dive deep into the unique challenges you face, from the inner turmoil to the outer obstacles. We'll blend neuroscience, IFS, and somatic healing, and explore practical strategies to help you navigate the world of entrepreneurship with ADHD with greater ease and effectiveness. I'm glad you're here. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here, especially now. These are tough times and something most of us have never been through, especially in the States. And so I'm happy to be offering this 5-part series on how we navigate what's going on. Today, I want to talk about nervous system regulation. And you've heard me talk about the nervous system a lot if you've been tuning into my podcast for however long. But just what I want to do today is briefly run down some of the things I'll talk about when I talk about nervous system regulation. Not a lot of theory, because I want to really get into how we cope in this moment. But first, I just want to share the way I look at the nervous system comes from polyvagal theory. And basically, the part of the nervous system that I'm focusing on specifically is the part that helps us with survival. And it's the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system from polyvagal theory, we believe, has 3 parts. And they all have to do with our survival one way or another. It's just they serve different purposes. So I'm going to refer to this very simply in terms of the 3 states, but these states can actually be blended and work together for different things. But when we're talking about what's going on in our bodies right now, especially if you're in the Twin Cities like I am, definitely the way I'm going to break this down will make sense. So ventral vagal is the part of the autonomic nervous system where we feel safe enough to rest, digest, and connect. It's where all of our systems are functioning optimally: our reproductive system, our digestive system, immune system. So you've heard me talk about when we're ventral vagal, we can connect with others, but also we can be relatively healthy. Our digestion is better, all those kind of things. When we perceive a threat, and perceive is a key word here, because our nervous systems are primitive. They don't know the difference between an actual bear chasing us and a eye roll or a nasty comment. And so when our nervous systems perceive threat, we go into our fight or flight response. And so that's what we call the sympathetic nervous system. You don't have to remember that, but we go into our fight or flight response so that we can fight or flee. But if it becomes clear that we're not going to be able to get out of this, our nervous system will shift into the dorsal vagal response, also known as, or what I refer to as, the shutdown response. And a lot of people call this freeze. I actually refer to freeze the way my trainer, Frank Anderson, refers to it. He was the one I trained in level 2 IFS on neuroscience and trauma. And he talks about the freeze state as being in, like, think of a deer in headlights, right? They still have all that activation going on, but they're not moving. They look stuck, right? And so that's kind of the in between fight and flight and shutdown. But dorsal vagal shutdown is a place of really your nervous system is shutting down, preparing to die. Like, in all honesty, it's like, okay, well, all hope is lost. I give up. And this is important because back when we lived out, in the wild, our nervous systems would dim the emotional and physical pain, which is great if you're going to be eaten alive by a tiger. So great stuff. But that's what's happening in our nervous systems. And what I notice a lot with complex trauma survivors, especially, is that there tends to be a vacillating between fight or flight and shutdown with some freeze in there and very little time spent in the ventral vagal response. And what I notice happening now to people, even who maybe don't have a complex trauma history, is that same pattern of spending a lot of time in fight or flight or shutdown. And shutdown can look like numbing or disconnect. It can be dissociation where you just feel like you're almost not even in your body, maybe not present. Whereas the fight or flight can be activation where you're ready to fight or flee, you want to leave, or you want to fight. You might feel angry or irritable or anxious, maybe restless, but there's some activated energy going on there. And so that's normal because, especially if you're in the Twin Cities metro area right now, and really all of Minnesota, because I know the federal agents are out in greater Minnesota as well. You're seeing them around. You know that they're not just coming after criminal undocumented immigrants. You know that they're coming for everyone, that they're instilling this fear. It seems very intentional if you're here. And I'm not here to argue with you about that. It's just my observation from being someone who's working in Minneapolis and living in a first-ring suburb. But so it makes sense that our nervous systems are kind of bouncing back and forth between fight or flight and shutdown. And this is important to understand because a lot of people are like, how do I cope right now? How do I get myself to feel better? And I'll share some ideas, but first I want to say, what if we're not supposed to feel okay right now? Because, like, what's happening isn't okay. And our not okay feelings, our anger, our rage, our irritability, maybe even our fear and anxiety are messengers from our body. It's our body saying, hello, this is not effing okay. This is not even a tiny little bit okay. Do something, right? And if you've had a lot of trauma in the past, or maybe you're living right nearby where these two civilians were killed, these two citizens were killed, then you're hearing whistles go off all the time. And so your nervous system is probably just like constantly in fight or flight. And that's your body's way of saying do something. And what that something is varies on the person. And we're going to actually talk about that, I believe, in the fifth episode of this series about how to act without burning out. But a lot of times the do something in the moment might be do something to, like, work with what's going on inside of you. So I want to share a little story, and then I'll get into a little bit how you can do this as well. Actually, first, let me back up. So a lot of times when we talk about coping, people just want to feel better. They don't want to hold this, even if it makes sense that they would feel angry and irritable. They don't want to keep feeling that way. And that's valid. First of all, it's not sustainable to be there. That's why our nervous system is actually designed to be ventral vagal most of the time, where we're safe enough to rest, connect, and digest, where our organs can rejuvenate, all that stuff. We're not designed to be out of that state very long. These survival responses are supposed to be temporary until we get back to safety. And so it makes sense that you would want to stop feeling this way. And I want to validate that it is okay to feel this way. If you are feeling very much in your fight or flight response, you're noticing a lot of anxiety, fear, anger, irritability, one option you have is to feel it and really let it land in the body. Now, here's what I want to say. If you have no experience feeling your feelings, like most people, I'd say at least Gen X and older, if not millennial and older, or what used to be Gen Y and kind of merged with millennial. But those generations, we were not really taught to feel our feelings. I mean, maybe some of the younger millennials a little bit. I remember when I was a school social worker really talking about it, but generally speaking, most of your parents didn't have the resources to teach you that because they weren't taught that. We're not here to judge the older generation for doing what they knew. And a lot of us don't know how to feel those feelings. So when I say, like, if you're feeling angry, let yourself feel it, journal about it, talk about it, let that anger come out. Use that anger to fuel your action. And again, we'll talk about kinds of actions in episode 5, but write your Congress people or protest, whatever it is you choose to do, but use that to fuel what you need to do. And if you're like, holy moly, I have never felt my feelings in my life. I'm a woman and anger was never allowed. I feel kind of scared of my anger. I'm afraid I have an anger problem, which, first of all, I want to just say women believing they have an anger problem. Every woman I've ever met in my office, seriously, every single one who has come in thinking they have an anger problem is actually someone who, more often than not, is validly upset about what's going on in their life or in the world. It's just that women were told that we can't feel anger. So anytime we feel angry kind of regularly because, well, what's going on, we feel like it's a problem because, we were taught to play nice and be sweet and whatever. And listen, if you're raging at people and you're hurting people because of your anger, that's a different conversation. But if you're feeling angry, that's normal and valid. And if you're noticing yourself yelling more, that doesn't mean you're bad. That's a natural consequence of it, but it's just that your anger might be getting misdirected at the wrong people if you're yelling at your kids or your partner or something like that, your friends, whatever. Unless, of course, they're the ones who are doing something that you're upset about. But we all know that yelling is not necessarily the most effective strategy, long term at least, and not great for relationships. But I digress. So if you've never felt that anger before and you're a woman and you're like, oh, I'm kind of scared of your anger, I highly recommend you seek a therapist who is comfortable with women's anger. There are a lot of therapists who will try and shut it down and not be okay with it. Not as much anymore, but there are still some who will. So, certainly you could ask before you meet someone how they work and how they operate, especially when someone's feeling angry about what's happening. Or you can just try it out and see. And if they shut down your anger, then, toodles, you find a different person. It's up to you. But if you've never worked through your anger before or felt it or written with it or sat with the parts who feel angry, I highly recommend getting some support for this. If you have, listen, this is where I'm going to tell this story. So I'm a therapist. I've been in the field of mental health since the year 2000. I couldn't actually call myself a social worker till I had my master's in 2005, but I've been in the field for a long time. And so I kind of expect myself to be able to feel my feelings and work through them because I almost always can because of my training and my practice doing it so I could then be helpful to other people. And I have felt so frozen lately. And maybe you'll see yourself in this too, but I have wanted to cry about what's happened. I've wanted to cry for Renee and Alex and their families and Keith. I've wanted to cry. I've wanted to let myself be sad because this is sad. I've wanted to let myself feel the fear and work with it. And all I felt is like numb and disconnected and like not able to access those feelings, which is not particularly common for me. I'm a highly sensitive person. I have usually pretty good access to my feelings, especially if I write to music. Things will come up, but nothing was budging it. And so if you're noticing this, know that this is protective. What we're in, especially if you're in Minneapolis right now or in the Twin Cities metro area, sure, everyone else as well, but especially in this area, our nervous systems are just protecting us because they don't necessarily see a way out of this. And if you're someone who is Black or brown, like if you're in a Black or brown body, your nervous system may need to stay there. This is not the time for you to work through those feelings if you feel like a significant risk going outside. I will say, as a white woman who's liberal, I feel uneasy about running into ice, like, I because they are taking all kinds of people off the street, but the chances are relatively low. So what I notice people like me are feeling is guilt and, like, wanting to help the people that are really being targeted the most. And so there's, like, this guilt and even shame that, like, "Oh my god, this is happening to my neighbors, and I feel helpless to stop them." So I do wanna name that that's there for a lot of us. But getting back to people who are in black and brown bodies, the people who are being most targeted right now, it may not be safe for you to feel your feelings just yet. Right now, safety and survival. I do this because I'm thinking of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where safety and survival are at the base of it, right? Getting your basic needs met. That's where you need to be right now. And for a lot of us, we are safe. We may not feel safe, but in this moment, we're safe. A lot of us are okay in our homes, and no, it's not fair that white people feel, it sucks. And the reality is that we are. And so what we can do to help is work through our own stuff. And again, if you need support, get it. But what would it be like for you to sit with your anger and feel it? What would it be like for you to write out or shout out all the things that you're angry about? And maybe not at someone. And, I mean, I was able to, this is where the story comes in. I'm in a mystery school for the divine feminine, basically learning about and honoring the divine feminine and women. And we had our healing circle yesterday, and it was my turn. And I was like, I can't feel my feelings and I want to, because I know I have to feel it to heal it. And I have the tools to handle it if I feel angry. And so I was like, but I don't know what to do, and I feel so frozen. And she's like, well, what's going on? I was like, I feel angry. And she held space for me to just share all the things I was angry about. First, I asked, like, can y'all handle this? Like, feel free to mute me. If you cannot listen to me, spout off. But I kind of yelled all the things that I'm feeling angry about right now, like every little one. And once I'd been going for, I don't know if it was like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, she gave me a lot of space. She said, okay, now can you pause and drop into your body? And what do you notice? And I had a pillow in my hand. She had me grab a pillow. And immediately I was connected with the body sensations of that anger. And then all of a sudden, the sadness came and I sobbed and my body shook, which is a form of releasing. And I was finally able to cry. And so the only way through this is through. The only way through what is happening right now is through, but the only way through your feelings right now is through. These feelings need to be felt. Part of the reason we're in this, I don't want to say crisis, because our country's been building up to this for centuries, at least since the Civil War, likely long before, because we started by massacring other humans to take this land. It's not funny. It's upset, like nervous laughter, but that's how we formed our country. And then we like got, at least how we came into the country. And then the way that we formalized our country was through war. And then we had another war. And so much of us have all this stuck stuff in our bodies from this lifetime, but also when you look at the study of epigenetics and how much we have trauma in our genes from our family line. You can look up Rachel Yehuda. She's got great stuff on Holocaust survivors. I don't want to get too heady about it because I do want to get to the how we deal with this right now. But we all have all this stuff in us. And part of why we're here is not a lot of people are working through it. And so if you have the privilege to be able to in this moment, part of what you can contribute is to work through your feelings so that you can get back to more of a grounded state, or maybe find more of a grounded state for the first time in your life, and that you can lead from that place of compassion and curiosity and care and connection and creativity. And so how do we cope in this moment? Well, if you're able, you feel the feelings. I will share some coping tools, but the reason I talk about the feelings first is because my concern is like, I can give you the coping tools, but with what's going on, we have to feel it to heal it. The coping tools are only going to work temporarily. There's this huge stuff that needs to be worked through. And when we don't work through our feelings, it's like holding a beach ball underwater. We can do it for a while. It tends to be a lot of work, but eventually, boom, explodes out in misdirected anger or harm to others, which is what we're witnessing live on YouTube right now. Sometimes people have TVs. My TV is not plugged in, but that's where I see all the things that are going on. Plus, I no longer trust legacy news because of some of the things I've seen them biasly report. And so, like, we're seeing the suppression of feelings. So many men were only allowed to feel anger or And so I'm not saying, like, believe me, I'm not letting them off the hook for what they're doing at all, not even a little bit. Everyone needs to be held accountable for the things that they're doing. And I understand that what we're witnessing right now is just all this outburst of things that have been held inside for a long, long time. And so part of our work in this moment can be actually working through what's coming up for us. On your own, if you've got it, with a therapist, highly recommend. But finding a way to be in this moment and meet your feelings and work through them. And it's not going to be a one-time deal. This is an ongoing situation. And quite frankly, where our country's at is going to be, this is going to be, it appears like there's going to be a fall. Things are going to fall apart before they can rebuild. And so we're going to be in this place for a while. So finding space, finding enough safety to work through what's coming up for you can then help you be a person who leads with compassion and love and creative problem solving and curiosity instead of judgment. And that's how we change this moment. That's how we start to make things change. You've seen the people of Minnesota were out there doing things for others. I'm more behind the scenes donating money and doing the work I do with people. But there are people in the streets protesting. There are hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of people helping the brown folks right now that are afraid to leave their homes. It's not safe for them to leave their homes. That is helpful in these moments too. If you can take action, that will help you be less likely to develop PTSD from this because you're actually taking action. Brene Brown, I remember, talked about, I can't remember if there was a study done or what it was, but basically the people in Hurricane Katrina, they were taken out of their area and other people came in and rebuilt. They had some of the highest PTSD because they didn't get to take the action that needed to be taken to complete the stress response, to complete what had happened, to remedy it. And so we're here now in this moment. And so what do you need to do? Yes, feel the feelings if you're in a place of privilege and you have space for that. And then let that place of maybe renewed calm or wherewithal help guide you into action. And again, we'll get more into that to part 5. But what about those of you that you're like, Jen, I cannot feel the feelings right now. It is way too much. There's no way, or I'm not safe in this moment to feel the feelings. If you're not actually safe, like if you are a brown person in the Twin Cities right now, for you, you actually need your survival response right now. It needs to be online, at least enough to keep you safe. You can try some things to help you regulate, but I don't want you to completely come out of that hypervigilance because it's not safe here right now. But you might be safe enough in a moment where maybe you could experiment with regulation and just see what it feels like for you. But for others, what we can do is we can regulate our nervous system. And so how do we do that? Well, if you're in your shutdown response, any movement at all, even visualizing movement, is going to help you. So if you're feeling kind of numb, if you're feeling disconnected or even dissociative, any movement at all. But what you need to know is that if you regulate out of that, you might jump into your fight or flight response. So we're going to talk immediately after this what to do if that happens. But when it's safe enough to do so, any movement at all, so that could be going for a walk, It could be stretching. It could be doing like some yoga. That was more dancey than yoga. You could do some yoga stretches. I love volcano breathing because it actually can help. It's fluid movement with breath, so it can help both regulate out of the shutdown response as well as the fight or flight response. But basically, volcano breathing is bringing your palms together in front of your heart. This comes from Yoga Calm, by the way. I want to cite my source. You bring your hands together in front of your heart. On an inhale breath, you reach your arms all the way up overhead. As you exhale, you bring your arms down around by your sides back to center. And you're welcome to do that at least 3 times total. That is a way, and you can do it slower than that. I was going quickly because I don't want to have you here forever, but that can help you regulate out of that shutdown response. And if you're like, wow, I can't do any of those things, visualize going for a walk. Look out the window at nature if there's any available, even if it's just one tree or one bird or a squirrel. We've got a crap ton of squirrels here in Minnesota, so there's always plenty of them. Finding some way to get movement in. If you then are in your fight or flight response, we need fluid movement with breath. So that is what I just did, volcano breathing. It can be a yoga sun salutation if you know that. You can do a partial one seated, like maybe inhaling, you might bring your arms overhead. As you exhale, you might fold. And I'm not going to fold because I've got the mic here, but you might fold maybe so that your belly comes down to your chest. And then on an inhale breath, you'll lift up your spine halfway, maybe placing your palms on your shins. And then on an exhale breath, you might fold again. Your hands might go towards the floor. On an inhale breath, you might reach your arms all the way up overhead again, coming back upright. And then as you exhale, you might bring your hands through heart center by your sides. And you might do that a few times. That is some fluid movement with breath. You can also play a breath-powered instrument or blow bubbles. There's lots of things you can do to move out of the fight or flight response and return back to ventral vagal. And what I want you to remember about this, none of these states is better than the others. They are all necessary. Fight or flight, freeze and shutdown are all necessary survival responses. We need them. It's just that we don't need them to be online all the time when we are actually safe enough to rest, digest, and connect. And so that's why we want to regulate our nervous system. And if you're someone who's living in the middle of where all this is happening in Minneapolis, first of all, my heart is with you. I live in a first-ring suburb, so I'm a little removed. My office is in Loring Park, so it's not far from where things are happening. But if you're living where the whistles are going off all the time, the whistles are there to help people. And they might be part of what's dysregulating your nervous system because it's a constant reminder of the threat. And so what you can do is take time to regulate between action. Using the strategies I just said, another easy one is to place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. And maybe breathe into both hands. And if you don't have access to the breath right away, that's a great time to get some movement in. Maybe you shake it off. Just let yourself shake. Maybe you can do the calmness mudra. You've seen me teach that, where your arms are in goalposts and you shake your hands back and forth. You're supposed to do it like 5 minutes. I can do it about 20 or 30 seconds, and then it just feels weird and I'm done. And then you can just shake it off, maybe swipe it off your body. And then you might place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly, maybe inviting in the breath. Maybe noticing it as it is. As you do that, you will regulate back and forth from the necessary survival responses back into what's also a necessary survival response, because it's where we can connect with people because we need each other, but also where our organs and our body can recover. As you do that, you're building resilience, and it's helping you act from a place of alignment with your values instead of just out of fear and whatever else is beneath anger. So I hope this was helpful for you today. I'm so grateful you're here. I hope you're still listening. I know this was long. I really want to help. I'm also actually wanting to share with as many people as possible. So please share this episode. And if you're not following already, be sure to follow. And if you haven't caught part 1 and 2, catch that. Those are great. And then parts 3 and 4 and 5 are coming soon. So I would love to have you here. But thank you so much for being here, and just take good care. Love from Minnesota.